Something big is brewing right now for the Toronto Raptors as this team is getting involved in the Jimmy Butler trade talks. They are not trying to acquire Jimmy Butler. This is not a one-for-one Bruce Brown going to Miami, Jimmy Butler going to Toronto, but this is the Toronto Raptors aggregating some of their salaries of veteran players that are making a lot of money this season but are on expiring contracts, so they're valuable in the current CBA, and multiple reports have linked the Toronto Raptors, have tied them to getting involved in order to make this trade happen. Because if you haven't been familiar, you haven't been following everything that's going on, Jimmy Butler has demanded a trade from the Miami Heat, and the only team that he wants to go to is the Phoenix Suns. Why? Not because the Phoenix Suns are great, but because they're willing to give him another massive extension once he ends up signing or gets traded to the Phoenix Suns. So he'll get 2 extra years of big money. So Jimmy Butler's trying to force his way there, and he's doing everything he can. Last week, there was a suspension dialed out to Jimmy Butler after all these antics he put on in the Miami Heat locker room and demanding trades and all that. Came back for a game and now is suspended once again as Jimmy Butler. The Heat are planning to suspend Jimmy Butler for 2 games as he missed a team flight on Wednesday that had plans to join the Miami Heat tonight, but now Miami's keeping him out for the 2-game road trip. So Jimmy Butler is getting suspended. There's people in his camp saying it's only going to get worse for Jimmy Butler. He is adamant about trying to make his way to the Phoenix Suns because he is a player option for a ludicrous amount of money. He is an older player right now, and it's kind of it's something that he wants to get done, assured that he gets an extra $50 million a year tied to the back end of his contract because, again, you got to milk out the prime years of your career while you can, and that's a realistic option that his agent's sort of pushing for Jimmy Butler here now at this point. So this deal, the situation keeps getting crazier right now in Miami, so a deal is likely to be imminent in terms of a trade happening because Jimmy Butler, we know he's very skilled, he's very great at finding his way out of organizations, whether it be the Timberwolves, whatever the heck it is. So what's going on? What does this have to do with the Toronto Raptors? Because, of course, he's not demanding a trade to us. It doesn't make sense for us to bring him in. So this is where the interesting stuff comes in. So Brian Windhorst came out and said that I had a team on Friday call me and say, hey, this team is trying to dump some salary, and they all of a sudden had to end our phone call and go do something bigger. I speculate that it has to do with the Jimmy Butler, and not just a direct Butler trade, but a 3-4 team type of deal. So Brian Windhorst is speculating that a big, he was over the weekend, that a big 3-4 team trade is getting involved about Jimmy Butler, and this is, of course, everything we've been hearing. Brian Windhorst is the big main name that you can rely upon in terms of these sites and insights and things like that in these trade conversations. But the Raptors were then linked in a very interesting report, as the Pistons, Raptors, and Wizards are among the teams that are open to the idea of taking on Pat Connaughton's contract for the right price. The Bucks have been actively attempting to trade Connaughton for months, and Milwaukee would escape the second apron if they offloaded Connaughton. So regardless of if this Jimmy Butler trade goes through, the Raptors have been linked to Pat Connaughton, and if we can get some draft capital, if we can get some assets back to take on Pat Connaughton, that's a win for Masai Ujiri, given the current state of this team. It depends on what we're giving up, how the package kind of looks, but that's the type of deal the Raptors want to be making, as we are in a season where we're trying to capture that flag, we're trying to tank, we're trying to bottom out, despite us winning 3 of our 4 last games, so let's hold our horses there a little bit, things that are going on now at this point. But this is where things get really juicy, really interesting. So essentially, news has come out that there have been whispers that the Washington Wizards and Toronto Raptors are getting involved in the Jimmy Butler trade as well, but it seems the momentum is geared toward this getting done soon, perhaps in the next few days. Detroit and Charlotte could operate as facilitators for a large deal as well, sources have told Yahoo Sports. This is Vincent Goodwill essentially coming out and saying these types of things, and this is, again, the Raptors are built for this right now. They're a team that's kind of constructed to have a bunch of expiring contracts that other teams would be interested in picking up. So Masai Ujiri is trying to negotiate, trying to slide his way into one of these deals. There are competitors, the Detroit Pistons, who have been good, so I don't think they want to take on bad salary and things like that, but the Washington Wizards, these types of teams. But the Raptors right now, if we're looking at their cap situation, they have Bruce Brown out there on their books, who's an expiring contract. They have Bruce Kelly Olynyk, who's on a 2-year deal, but still pretty short-term money, and then Chris Boucher as well, who is going to expire this year, and as well as Davion Mitchell, who has the option to be, expiring this season. So the Raptors have a lot of guys, a lot of pieces that, one, can be helpful for a win-now team. So a team like the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Phoenix Suns, they'd be interested in picking up these guys to actually play in their rotation and then have that cap flexibility going into next year where where you're not reliant on all this money tied down. Because if you're not familiar, there's a lot of gymnastics being played by the executives around the NBA with the current cap structure. There are a lot more rules going on in regards to what you can actually do if you're over that hard tax line. There's trade restrictions. You can't trade multiple players. You can't aggregate pieces out there and moves. You get absolutely dinged with the luxury tax year after year after year. So the owners are paying a ton of money that they otherwise wouldn't be spending. So teams don't want to be in that luxury tax cap threshold now at this point. So there's a lot of value in these expiring deals. So you can get off of longer term money and then essentially, have that flexibility going into the next off season to sign other players and make sure you're under that cap mark so you can make trades to build up your roster and not be hardlined by all these crazy rules. So the Raptors are a prime position to be played like this, to be in that sort of spot, and then to add fuel to the fire, because you have all these reports coming out from these inside reporters. No one knows if this guy is a legit guy or not, but he is getting aggregated everywhere. So we're just going to bring it up very quickly. But sources say the Toronto Raptors are highly motivated to get involved as the fourth team in a Jimmy Butler trade, willing to absorb salary in exchange of draft capital for young assets. Phoenix, Miami, and Milwaukee are all pushing to finalize a deal in the coming days. So the Raptors, this makes a ton of sense as being the fourth team out here, regardless of how connected this guy is. Chris Davis, who's been brought up a ton, in recent weeks. The Raptors have been linked from multiple pieces, and where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something massive brewing in the wings in regards to a Jimmy Butler trade, in regards to something going on with this squad. So the Raptors, they are one of those key teams that can actually facilitate something. And while, again, the Raptors are a team I don't imagine wants to be bad for year in, year out, but this season, taking on some contracts, so again, you take on a Pat Connaughton who isn't even horrible. This season, his numbers are certainly down to extreme extent. 4.6 points, 2.9 rebounds. He's been in and out of the rotation, at 28% from behind the 3-point line. He just hasn't been great. 32 years old, but getting off of his money so the Bucks get under the luxury tax, regardless, because the Jimmy Butler trades, the multi-team trades, they're very tough to predict. They're really tough to put together. They're really tough to get there. So regardless, I wouldn't be shocked if the Jimmy Butler thing fell through, the team didn't get involved. You see a deal like a Pat Connaughton coming to Toronto and the Raptors getting a first round pick because of it. So the Bucks get under that luxury tax. That wouldn't be a deal I'm surprised to happen, but the Raptors seem highly motivated and want to use these expiring contracts. There's value in terms of making these moves because we know how elite of a draft, scout Masai Ujiri is, how the scouting team has been under his regime over the past decade or so for the Toronto Raptors. So the more picks we get, especially in 2025 when it's supposed to be a loaded draft class, you got to try to take advantage of that. And if you have pieces, you brought in expiring contracts, you could structure your roster in this specific way in order to get in on one of these moves. I mean, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we be doing everything we can to sort of make something like this happen? So let me know what you guys think. There's a ton of stuff coming out regarding this Raptor squad, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Again, if you made it this far and you're part of the 67% of our viewers that haven't hit the subscribe button just yet, you want to stay up to date, hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.